It was interesting because I had been thinking about other people's success and how analyzing that and how they got to where they are since I was feeling stuck. And instead of looking at it in a negative light, trying to look at it in a positive way, because it's so hard. I have to tell my daughter this, and I think everyone needs to be reminded, everyone's path is different. Not everyone takes that same, path to whatever is success for them. So I was looking at that and I saw a lot of composers releasing albums, but under a pseudonym. And I thought, that's a great idea. Why not do that? So my 2017 was focused on that. So it was just an experiment and it seemed to work out. It's kind of how that happened.
And now name it and describe what you're talking about.
Oh, I have a self-release album called Anasia, and the name of the album is Five Mice. It's on Spotify and Pandora, so go listen, add me to your playlist. And it's an ambient album. It's about 35 minutes, and it's designed to, not to pay attention to. So sleep to it, study to it, meditate to it, work to it. It's not songs per se where you have to sit and listen, 3.5 minutes of your life to a specific song, listen to a message. You're not supposed to dance to it. It doesn't have a purpose other than to make your life better. That was the whole point. Good. So I hope it does that. Thank you. Yeah, I've always been fascinated with sound, but yet I'm a classically trained composer. I got a doctorate from USC. So there's craft there always. So for me, the music, even though it is ambient, it definitely has to have movement and go somewhere. And, there's a lot that goes in there as far as how I do that and, craft my work, which is, not what we're talking about today. But, I applied that same rigor to that ambient music, electronic generated music. So I'm happy with it. Hi, I'm Leanna Premiani. I'm a composer and conductor, and I'm also a composer of film and television. And you may also know me as Anasia, and I write a lot of electronic and ambient music. So Dana and I were talking, and we thought it would be a good idea to share with you our thoughts and our conversations about ideas that hold us back. For me, right after my dad died, he was living with us, I was really angry, and I couldn't figure out why I was so mad. Without getting personal, I did a lot of self-examination and realized that I just had a lot of negativity. I had realized in many aspects, I kind of have three aspects of my artistic life and how I make a living. One is as a composer and conductor for classical music, and another is a composer for film and television, and now this as a solo artist, solo recording artist. And I just couldn't figure out what was holding me back. I have a doctorate from USC. I've conducted major orchestras throughout the United States and Europe. I also have conducted, ballet, most of the Balanchine ballets, all the Stravinsky ballets, a lot of story ballets, so these, gargantuan productions of Prokofiev and Tchaikovsky, blah, blah, blah. And then also opera, middle period Verdi, and 20th century opera, and a lot of new music as well. And I've also written a lot of music for film and TV. So, but I've been, stuck in a certain limited, kind of $5 million and below. Everything is kind of dependent upon budget and film and TV. So, and I think a lot of people in Los Angeles, can relate to that. You're kind of stuck in this certain, what am I looking for? Yeah, you're just stuck, and you're trying to get to that next level, something with maybe more artistic merit or just the bigger gig. And it's hard to break through that. And I was noticing this in elements of my life. And after my father died, I had a chance to take a break and just really examine what was going on. And then I realized, instead of being mad at people for their success, like, just take a back seat and say, okay, that's great for them, but what are they doing that I'm not doing? And I think that's fair for everybody. So if you are a visual artist and you go to a gallery and there's a hot new opening and everyone says this artist is great, and you go and you're like, what the hell is this? Right? We have all been there. I can't tell you how many times you turn on for me, go to a movie or turn on a TV show and you're like, dude, what? I don't understand why this guy, I don't get it, right? We have all been there. Actors, you go to an audition and you try to book something and you find out it's somebody else, and then you watch the show and you're like, I could have blown that guy out of the water. How did they book that gig and I didn't? I think it's true with any kind of artistic life that you have. And maybe even when you go for an interview just to get a job and you don't get it, and you see the guy who got it and you are baffled. So it's so easy to get negative, and there are a lot of people who are negative. So without sounding too hippy-dippy for me, and I was talking to Dana about this as well, I thought, okay, let's take a back seat, and I'm not saying be happy for them, because you certainly don't have to, but at least say, okay, this guy did X, they got X gallery opening, they got X job, they booked X part on whatever show. What did they do? What are they doing that I am not doing? So then I took an honest look to see how they were doing, what they were doing, what support system they had in place. How many people were helping them? Were they totally alone? Were their friends helping them? Were they connected? Did they have a lot of money to buy the publicity or to, whatever it is that people do to get, better headshots or blah, 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 whatever it is. But beyond that, it's the attitude that when you see what they've done, it almost gives you permission to say, wait a minute, I can do that. If that guy can do that and be that successful, then I can do that. And I think that I just gave myself permission to do something different than the status quo that I had been stuck in for, 6 or 7 years, since my daughter has been born. And it was very, I was relieved and enlightened and empowered. And that's kind of how Dana and I came to this point for us to talk and share that with you.
Cool. Well, that's super good.
Well, I wake up really early in the morning. That's how I do it. I have, since this has happened,
Let's start again.
Okay.
Never say this or that.
Right, because you're kind of, as soon as I said it, I realized,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So you can start fresh.
Okay. Well, how do I do it? I wake up very early in the morning, and I'm very organized. For me, I realized that being a classical composer and being a film composer, I had 2 different musical voices going on, or I thought I had to have, 2 different musical voices, because these people over here that had the success did X, and these people who had the success over here did Y, and I felt that I had to do X and Y, which was not, I was feeling a little schizophrenic because I was spitting out two different kinds of art. And last year, when I conceived of the idea of Anasia, which is my solo artist name, Anasia is Greek for resurrection, which is why I chose the name. I'm Greek. I felt that it was time to just be one person if I was indeed going to not only, succeed and, get those bigger jobs, get bigger commissions, and do all of those things that we talk about, but also just be satisfied in my artistic life, just generating art and music and whatever one does every day. Like, you still have to be happy with that first before I think anything else comes. So for me, it was, okay, how can I need to combine my voices. So I took, so I really took some real time finding out what my voice was and what does that mean to me. That means, what is the first thing that comes naturally to me? What is the first thing I do when I sit in front of a blank piece of paper? What is the first thing I do when I look at a film? What is the first thing I do if I wanted somebody to hear my music? What is the first thing I would pull out? And then I realized the things I love to do. I have not a very large modular rig, but something called modular synthesis, and I have a lot of internal synthesis that I do, computer-generated synthesizers and bespoke sounds that I create, kind of sound designy, ambient, for lack of a better word, putting those things with orchestral instruments in an orchestral setting, like a tone poem or a symphony or a sonata or something like this, or, for lack of a better word, and combining those elements. And if I'm writing music in if I'm writing a symphony and I would write a flute line, and how would that craft of physically coming up with that idea, how would that translate into electronics, since that's what I love? And vice versa, how my instinct with electronics, how can I do that in an acoustic instrument? Piano, winds, brass, whatever, and how to combine those in a way that is pleasing, not only to me, because I don't live in a vacuum, it's not that world anymore, and that other people will enjoy. It doesn't have to be a lot, but it would be nice if, a couple people actually liked what I was doing, and not just, my friends. So that's kind of how that worked. So I took a lot of time doing that, and I think the culmination of that was this solo project that I did last year, because I combined both the classical elements and techniques and the craft of composition that I've worked very hard in, learning and solidifying and, having my own voice, and then taking this electronic side of things, which is, for me, was kind of the film side, because I did a lot of that. That's kind of my voice in that respect, and combining those two areas. So the culmination of all of that work was Anasia. One thing for me that has become a cornerstone of my creativity is the way that I think about creativity and the way that I think in general. And I don't want to freak anybody out, but for me, I was looking at everybody. Why are they successful? How did they succeed? And I think a very obvious part of that is someone like our dear president. How did that happen? He was a joke, and now he's president. I don't understand, well, I understand it now, at least for me, because I had to come to terms with it, but how does one It's so difficult, especially living in California, like I do, and having the friends that I have, and everyone's complaining and everybody's upset, you're, everywhere you turn, but you have to think there's gotta be a reason why. And it just can't be the people on both coasts being mad and everyone else in the middle. Like, it's gotta be more than that. And I really think it is, don't turn it off and don't hate me. I think it is his attitude. So as he was getting closer, I watched a documentary on PBS about, they did a doc right before the election about Trump and Hillary Clinton, and how they started out young and their lives and kind of what led them to this place. They're both, could be president. I want to say maybe it was August, September, that doc was. I don't know if you remember it, Dana. Fascinating, I highly recommend it. And just to see how her life was, which is a very typical, she does well in school, she went to Wellesley, she was the thing, she's always been on the national, right, just everything you would want your daughter to be and everything you would expect from a president, right, the success and like just how they're thinking and what she did, and it was fascinating and I love her. And then you look at him and how his life was. And, kind of a typical rich kid in New York. But what was interesting was that he grew up in the church of Norman Peale, who was the guy, one of the first people who talked about the power of positive thinking. And he wrote that book, in the 40s or the 50s, which is still a bestseller. And he grew up, there was some big church where he preached in New York City, and they went religiously every Sunday to hear him speak from the time he was a little boy, and his father was adamant. And this whole thing about Trump talking about winning, you have to be a winner, we're winners, America's winner, America's great, that came from his childhood, because that is the way, I've read the book, I wouldn't necessarily interpret it that way, but that was the way it was interpreted in the Trump household. Okay, but to be able to not only think that, but say that, and will it. He willed that. I know you think I'm crazy, but I truly believe that he, from early on, he really thought he could be president, and he told himself, and he believed it. He wanted to be a star. He became a star. He became a household name. How did this just real estate guy playing with his dad's money, right, and losing money and being bankrupt and still come out on top? How does that happen? And I've got to believe that the way that happens is with his attitude, because there are a lot of people who have a trust fund and who have a lot of money and who dabble in real estate and who go bankrupt. He's not the only guy in America that's happened to. And they waste away, or you don't hear of them again, or they've never had that success. And I really think it's the power of your mind. I absolutely believe that. And I think the reason why he's still in office is because no matter what happens, just the way he, who is this guy who just keeps tweeting this stuff, right? Who does that? And nothing happens. I'm convinced that it's because it's the way that he thinks. So for me, I looked at that and I looked at other people and I thought, okay, there's got to be something to that. Let's examine what's happening, just the way you talk to yourself. So as I started to catch myself, it was really negative. It's really negative, like that self, whatever it was. Oh my God, why did I do that? I'm so stupid. No, you're not. You're not stupid. How many times a day do people tell that negative self-talk? How many times does that happen? If you sit and you think about and you're aware of it, how many times does that happen? It happens a lot. So if you can change that dialogue in your head, right? To, God, stop it. Just don't say it to yourself. Great, awesome, super, something else other than the negativity, and then get into that habit of that positive stuff, right? Because I think a lot of us, at least for me, I meditate, I practice TM, and you meditate or you pray or you're mindful or you do all this stuff that now we do because it's good for you and it's great. But the second you're done with that, you're back to your old negative ways and negative thinking and all of this. It's like you just jinxed everything you just worked so hard to do. And so you're in this, kind of cycle that you can't break. So I should thank you, President Trump, for letting me see the light of positive thinking.
That's funny.
How do I generate ideas or generate the desire to get up and work? I have limited time. It's all about my limited time. Being a mom and also a wife, I have responsibilities, whether they're self-imposed or not. But, my daughter comes home from school at a certain time, and I have dinner on the table, and we have family time, and there's that. But it's limited because of her bedtime. So we've got, I'll say, from 4 o'clock to maybe 8:30 as a family together. So that's sacred. That doesn't go anywhere. Then you have to work backwards. What time does she go to school? How much help can I get in the morning? So there are all these logistical things that help determine when I work. I've gotten into the habit, especially if I'm on a project, to get up at 5:30, and I can really, especially with a deadline looming, I love a deadline, I can't work without one. With that deadline, it really helps generate ideas and music, and things come, and things are very fast. And then I'd say by 2:30, 3 o'clock, I'm I like to say I'm out of notes, right? I'm kind of spent. And then I try to regroup and get myself together for when she comes home, and then it's family time. And then I can get up in the morning, so I've got a good 7, 8, 9 hours of solid work. But if I'm not working specifically on a deadline, per se, even self-imposed deadlines help me, it doesn't matter. But if I have something to do, I don't know, whatever it is, get ready for the next project or get the next project going, I still know that that's my limited time. I can't work at 7 o'clock at night. I can't work at 4:30. So for me, it's just a matter of logistically, of just having time, setting that time, putting it in my calendar. I work from 5 to 3 or 5 to 3:30, whenever that window is for me. And that's what it is. So if an idea or inspiration comes to me, I have, and I'm just out and about, or at a meeting with friends, or however it goes, I always have a notebook with me, and I have on my phone I have a recorder, and I can usually record ideas, or I usually text myself just a quick idea. And it's funny, I usually don't get ideas about creating music, but I get ideas about other things like social media. I need to call this person, I should be doing that, what should I be doing? How can I, what can I be doing to help generate more art? So those are the kinds of ideas that I have usually out and about. In music, or my feelings in music, it's interesting. I love sound, and I love all kinds of combinations of sounds. And without geeking out too much, I love found sounds. Birds chirping, machines kind of cranking, whatever it is, taking those home, putting those through my filters and all of my stuff, and coming out with something new. and even cutting them up and creating pulses and beats and different things. I love to do that. And what I love to do is hear new music, either in a classical setting, like a string quartet or an orchestra or whatever, or even in a film that is not traditional tunes and sounds or whatever. I want to hear the piccolo not on the top where you hear it, but I want to hear the piccolo in the basement. And what I mean by that is in their lowest register, and how that's maybe with violas and cellos with mutes, or just something different. I just want to hear something different. I want to hear brass with crazy mutes that they never use, and combinations with different instruments that you don't normally hear. I want to hear, when I go to movie, I don't want to hear tunes and developments of tunes. I mean, sometimes you want to hear that. Like, for example, I think Howard Shore is a perfect example of this. He can kind of do the gamut. So he's Lord of the Rings composer, so all those tunes, and it's very Wagnerian in the way that he had to create that music, because it's a trilogy. There are 3 movies. He had to keep track of all of those themes and motives, exactly like Wagner. I'm not saying he is Wagner. I'm just saying the technique is very similar. And how he had to keep track of those, how he had to develop them, how the characters develop, awesome. But yet at the same time, he writes music like that James Spader film Crash. I don't know if you remember that, Soderbergh, right? Unbelievable. But he took harps and guitars antiphonally, and that's all he used, and he just created these pulses and sounds. I wouldn't even call the tunes motives per se, like you could sing it, but it just created this unbelievable atmosphere, which I think is amazing. And I think Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, they do the same thing with their music, if you remember. I think that especially mid-career artists of any type, it's hard because there are so many of us and we're here. And it's just a matter of how do other people, you look around and you see people getting plucked, right? Chosen. This is any field. And I think that you just have to figure out why, first of all. And I don't think you have to change your voice to be able to be recognized and plucked, but certainly figure out what aspect of your art, whatever it is, if you're a singer or a dancer or a visual artist or a painter or a sculptor or a photographer, like what is it about you that makes you you, right? And it could be anything. It could be the way you choose to light something, where you choose to put paint and how much paint you put on that canvas, where you choose to put your notes and where they fall in our canvas. As a composer, our canvas is time. So where does that fit in that canvas? Like, what is it about your decisions as an artist that makes you unique? If you can figure that out and then do that without the other stuff, for me, that has been immensely helpful, and I think it will help you too. So when to stop, or how do you know when it's done? It was fascinating. I was listening to an interview of, I can't even remember what it was, but it stuck with me, that there was an art critic that went to his child's school, right? And it was like, I want to say K-8 or something. It was in New York. And they had an art teacher for the lower school, right? And then they had other art teachers for other grades. And the he went into that, I want to say K2 room, to the art room, and he said every piece of art on that wall, drawings, paintings, anything that was around was an absolute masterpiece, right? He's like, it was magnificent, the way they flicked their paint onto the canvas when they were doing their Jackson Pollock, kind of style, learning about that. And then when he went to the other rooms, it was just, like if they were kids, right? They were learning how to draw, they were figuring it out, okay, but like the spark was there. And he said to the instructor, he's like, how does this happen? Like you're creating these geniuses. She's like, no, I know when to take it away. Wow, how great is that? So I think you just have to know when to just say enough. That's what's so great about a deadline. You have to stop. And I'm the queen of the rewrite. I will rewrite till the cows come home. It drives my publisher bonkers, but you just have to say enough. And you know what? If somebody doesn't like it, they can go to hell. Too bad.